All right, everybody, welcome to AgUncensored. This is episode 29. I feel like I should introduce this guy, but honestly, I don't know that I should, because if you're listening to this, there's a 99% chance that you follow him, and it's Dwayne Faber. His Twitter handle at dfaber84. Dwayne is he's a rock star, man. He just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, he just lights it up, and it is hysterically funny to watch his feed every day. And I don't know how long he's been on there, but man, he's made a definite lasting impression among everybody that I've seen him interact with. But Dwayne, thanks for coming on, man. Do you want to tell?
Absolutely, Jared. No, glad to be here.
I'd ask if you want to tell people about yourself, but do you feel like you're pretty well known already out there?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about Twitter. I mean, you get kind of a window into somebody's mind with Twitter, and that's the fun to me. And yeah, it's definitely a place where you share how your day's going, what's going on. And I feel like I'm pretty much an open book on Twitter and kind of share a lot of that stuff. I've got one philosophy, and that is, it doesn't pay to complain. I mean, half the people don't give a shit, and the other half are glad you got the problem. And I try not to do that at all. I mean, it's just, you get nothing out of it. And so, I mean, sometimes there's a perception that everything's just, sunshine and roses over here, but that's certainly not the case. So no, it's usually, the positives and something funny. And, but yeah, no, it's grown. It's been fun, and I really enjoy it.
So how did you even get on there? Because I'm one of those old guys that started in there a long time ago, and then every now and then you'll see somebody that just shows up and just takes over the place. I mean, you literally have just owned it for, I don't know, how long have you been on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many people did this, but I mean, I opened it up, started an account, and kind of dipped my toe in the water, and then I didn't do much with it for a year or so, and then it was around the time of the Trump, when Trump got elected, it was the time they were burning down St. Louis. I think they were burning down St. Louis.
Oh,
I didn't have that many followers.
That was the greatest when people were like jumping over candy bar stacks and like looting stores and burning everything.
Right. Yeah, and so I had some tweet about, oh, hey, we're going to show everybody how, harmonious and peaceful and loving we are by just like going out and destroying our city. And it just blew up. And I mean, I think it's the reason why a lot of people do this. I mean, maybe it's low self-esteem or what, I don't know. But I mean, they're getting likes and retweets. There's something fun about that, right? And that's what I experienced too. I was like, dang, this is kind of fun. This is cool. And so I just started developing it more and growing with it. And it's always a little intimidating. And I kind of felt that, right out the gate too, it's awkward. You're talking to yourself, and then, you've got all these other people having conversations, and you're wanting to respond to them and talk to them. And it always felt weird to me. And even still, I struggle with that a little bit. One-on-one, I love talking to people. I love meeting people, but the interacting on Twitter, I struggle with, but I love just posting random crap out there and seeing where it goes. And it's been fun doing that. So
yeah, one thing I've always thought is, I looked at it like I'm just having this conversation in my head and I'm letting everybody else in on it. That was kind of the thing that came to me, is that I'm going to say this stuff anyway. And, and a lot of times really funny things. And I think that that's like your trademark, dude, is you have a great sense of humor. Some really funny things always come from like dark places. And I told you I was going to ask you this. Like, so my question is, who hurt you as a kid? because at the deep down dark recesses of your psyche, man, something happened, because you are bent in a special sort of way, but in a good way. Like, do you think if there's any childhood trauma that led you to be as funny as you are?
You know what? Honestly, I can say none, really. I mean, I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. I'm really optimistic. I agree that comedy, the best comedy to me, comes from really dark places. It's from people that struggle and have problems, and then you tend to view things and notice things where people don't typically notice them. And that's what comedy is going and comparing stuff and contrasting stuff, but then also picking up on something or stating the obvious, that's glaringly obvious, that nobody else can pick up on. I mean, I will say, when I first started too, I kind of felt like an outsider, so we can go Dr. Phil on it, but I always felt kind of like an outsider. And there were a few people that were, dismissive. and I'm also petty and pedantic. And so I was like, well,
you had them marked. You were like had lipstick and you had their name and you were writing it out like, I'll get you.
Exactly right. Exactly. No, there was kind of the old stalwarts, and then they were kind of dismissive, and you know what? I'm competitive. And so it's like, you know what? Well, I'll show you. I'll just keep posting shit out there till people notice me, and, till it grows into something, then people know who I am. I mean, I don't know. That's probably more information you want to know, but
that's my philosophy with this podcast is I'm just going to keep throwing it out there till somebody finally notices it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, it's a podcast, it's Twitter, it's life, right? I mean, you just keep busting your butt, you focus on something, and what you water will grow, and people recognize quality, and it'll turn into something. So
you bet. Well, you did, man. You nailed it on that. Well, now I'm sitting here thinking, well, was I one of those petty people? Because I don't remember it. I'm like, damn, was I one of those guys? So I have to ask. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. My wife's like, who's this Jared on the mirror? Every morning there's Jared scribbled on the mirror.
Nothing, honey. I'm doing that. A long time ago, we had these Google Hangouts we would do. And this one guy came on one time, and I'll never forget it. And his wife asked him, "Why are you talking to all your imaginary friends on the computer?" And it was we used to do that, and it was kind of the same thing. His wife was perplexed as why will you interact with these crazy people who you don't know? So, have you noticed that? Because you really you don't know people. You kind of do in a sense,
right?
You interact with them, but like. What does your wife or your extended family or people who aren't on Twitter and maybe don't understand how big of a presence you are there, like do you crack the same jokes and get a different response? Do you like, hey, this would have killed yesterday if you just, would have been there?
Yeah, exactly. So my wife, yeah, she's totally cool with it. I mean, I've definitely dialed it back. So once or twice a week, she goes and Googles my handle and then just checks up on me and see what I'm saying and see who's commenting on my stuff and keeping me in line that way. But no, she's cool with it. It's definitely something that it is a little bit weird, right? You're sharing a lot of your life publicly, and I like Twitter in the fact that you really get to know somebody. I mean, you can follow somebody for a while and be like, dang, they're crazy, man. I mean, there's just something off there.
There's something not right about that cat.
Right. I mean, you can hide who you are for a little while, and keep putting out stuff, but it's hard to fake it, and trying to come up with comedy and be funny, it's tough too. And so much of it is sentence structure, and I love the English language. I love sentence structure. My mom's a school teacher, and that's part of the reason. That's part of the appeal to me is doing that. I'm too ugly to do Instagram. I mean, I'm too poor to do Instagram. And Facebook, it was all just family, it's hard to get out from family. And, this one is just kind of a window to the world and just keep throwing stuff out there. And so it's been good. It's actually not a lot of people know that I'm on Twitter. A lot of the extended family, they're not aware of it. There's a few, but no, for the most part, a lot of people don't know that I'm even out there.
So you're kind of like Batman at family reunions. You're just lurking around. Like I've got this alter ego that is killing it every day.
Exactly right. Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody knows about that. And hey, you know what? That's fine too. I mean, and I went through it. I think everybody, as you attain success, you think, oh, hey, I'm something special. I've got these 20, 25, 30,000 people that follow me, and at the end of the day, I'm a regular bro too. I mean, and what is Twitter? I mean, I go down the streets, nobody knows who I am. I mean, I do have it. You go to a farmer thing and a few people will come up and say hi. But I think you still need to keep your head about you. I think, when you get enveloped in the Twitter world, you think that is everything, when it's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot bigger world out there.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what's it like to be somewhat of a Twitter celebrity? Because when you do show up to these, and there'll be people that you interact with, but maybe you haven't met, and they'll walk up, and you have to stop for a minute and realize who they are. That you've talked to this person for years, but at the same time, you've never met them in real life. Then you do, and Like what have you been have you had that experience where you've traveled to events and stuff and kind of just sprang
Yeah,
up and be like, whoa, hi, how's it going?
exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I'd love to do more of that, right? Like we were talking about earlier, you get to know somebody in a lot of ways on an intimate level, and you feel like you know them already, and you do go out and meet them, and there's definitely this bond and this camaraderie that that is out there. And so I do have that. You know, you'd go to farmer events, and there's recognition, and you talk to people, and it's been fun. I mean, actually, Jacob Willenberg, he was in Washington. Was it this summer? And we went and had a beer together, and it's fun. I mean, it's that's part of the appeal, is going and meeting these people and talking to them. And you know, the crazy thing is, like, dairy Twitter, there's very few dairy producers on Twitter. Like the corn and soybean thing, I mean, it just blows up. I mean, they're everywhere.
Really?
You know, maybe it's all that time you got in the winter. I don't know. You're sitting there in the shop with nothing to do.
Well, I'm a corn guy, but I also run cattle, and so I kind of like have my foot in both worlds. Like I see cattle Twitter, I see a whole bunch of dairy Twitter. I think that there's tons of dairy guys because they go milk and they're just sitting there watching this thing
You're right.
or whatever. And if it was me, I'd be like, all right, now I can check this while I wait on these cows. Man, I'd love to talk about dairy because you guys you're a different crew. I mean, that whole thing of like milking cows for a living. And I don't know, last week I had Jacob on and we talked about the East Coast, West Coast. I call it the dairy rap battle. You know, the East Coast.
Rock, man.
Yeah, the East Coast are smaller dairies, and the West, big, wide expansion, you know, awesome big dairies. And it's just, do you find that as you go across the country or go to dairy events, is there a different culture between East and West?
There is, you know, and it's a little bit difficult because, you know, I mean, the average herd size in Washington State, I think we're about 800 cows, you know, and the county that I'm in, there's probably about 15 or 20 dairies, and there used to be about 200 dairies. And the county north of me, you can double those numbers, and they went out of business, you know, and basically with a lot of smaller dairies and operations that went out of business, and they were forced to go out of business. Because the pay price we get on the west coast of the U.S. is less than they get in the Midwest, and some of that is population. The population centers in the upper Northeast, you know, and on the East Coast, and so a lot of our milk price gets priced on Class 1 fluid milk sales. That's your most profitable milk sale, and so they were capturing those markets, and we were resigned to powder and export and kind of the bottom of the barrel, and so our pay prices were historically $1.50 to $2 a hundredweight less than the middle of the country. And so we saw mass consolidation for, you know, probably the last 15 years. And now they're going through that in the Midwest. And they're seeing that in the upper Midwest and in upper, you know, Northeast, in New York. And it's unfortunate. It's painful, right? I mean, it's never fun to see, you know, people in your industry go out of business. It's painful, and it's not nice. And yet at the same time, if you haven't changed your business model in 30 years, you're going to get run over. And, you know, it's like McDonald's came to town and they pushed out every mom and pop, you know, restaurant out of business, and the dairy industry. And in a lot of ways, we've been immune to that in the commodity world. I mean, you know, there's still smaller beef ranches, there's still smaller dairies, still smaller, you know, family-run operations, and I only see that continuing. I mean, it's going to go the way probably of the chicken industry, where there's 5 major players or 4 major players. You know, and yet the dairy thing is a little bit different, because you get to the point where too many cows on one location, you're just replicating processes, and you're no more efficient. You can't put 60,000 cows on one dairy and be more efficient than a well-run 3,000 cow dairy with enough land base around the facility to make 90% of your feed.
So it's like
there is a few things.
It's like the law of diminishing returns. Like, you can get efficient, but then after a minute, then it's just scale. I mean, how many people do you want to employ? How big of a headache do you want to deal with every day?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a facility now that is acres and acres and acres. It's way too big too, and so you have employees that are walking too far. You're walking cows too far. It's harder on the cows. You know, there is a point of diminishing returns, and I mean, to me, the future is still the Midwest. I mean, you put a 3,000 cow dairy in South Dakota and you're surrounded by corn and soybeans. Do they grow soybeans in?
Yeah.
I don't even know if they grow soybeans in South Dakota.
Oh, this is going to be awesome.
But
your name is going to be on a mirror because some soybean farmer somewhere is going to be like, oh.
So I pissed off South Dakota soybean growers. I think they might follow me on Twitter. The South Dakota Soybean Association.
That's awesome. Yeah, they want to get mad at you, but they have to laugh at your jokes every day, and they're like, "Damn it, why can't he not be funny?"
Right.
No, I think you're right.
Doesn't even know we grow soybeans.
You know what's funny is that back in like the 1900s or wherever, the IBP used to be Iowa Beef Packers. I mean, all the meat industry and everything was centered in the Midwest because that was where they could grow the feed. Then I don't know, some point they moved out to the high plains, like where I'm at in the western Oklahoma, northern Texas, western Kansas, and they put the feedlots out there because it was dry. They didn't have to deal with mud. They didn't have to fight all the things, and we could irrigate, grow feed. So we kind of mimicked the Midwest in our production capabilities. But now as that is drawing to a close and the aquifers are going down, I think you're right. I think you'll see a movement of these things back to the Midwest because you can either move the cattle to the feed or move the feed to the cattle. And I mean, you in essence do that every day in the dairy industry.
No, exactly right. I mean, I kind of joke too. My dad grew up in Michigan, and then Grandpa went and looked at the map, and he's like, "Where's the highest basis in the country? Let's move there because my son wants to eventually dairy." And here we are on the West Coast, and we ship all our grain in from South Dakota, and there's a cost associated with that. And we're in an area that gets more and more populated. Eventually it's going to be all people and houses as people move to the coast.
Yeah.
And there's a certain.
Just to clarify, you're in Washington, correct?
I am, and it's definitely split into two sides. I mean, I'm on the west rainy side, and then the east side is definitely more of a dry climate and more of a Idaho type climate. So
okay, I'm familiar with. I spent a lot of time as a kid out in Oregon, so it was kind of like that mountain range. You get on the west, it's nice, it's beautiful. You get on the east, and it's just like dry desert, miserable, nothing. But so just to I just was making sure. I don't know that I ever asked that, but so you're on the nice, like touristy side of Washington, where like do people still wear flannel like 24/7?
Flannel. I mean, so we've got definitely like more red areas and hick areas. Although Seattle, I mean, it's all hippies anyway, but it's definitely a pretty relaxed dress code anyway. I mean, it's all hoodies and whatnot anyway, and pajama pants, and it's all kinds out here. But there, it's not as much flannel as the east side. You can pick out an east sider. I mean, they got the button down. Maybe it's a cattle thing too. The button down shirt. I mean, they've got the Romeos and the type. Little bit of a pot belly going on, and there it is. So
yeah, I think you just described half of the cattle Twitter.
I pissed off the other half of cattle Twitter. I mean, I'm just on a roll tonight.
Well, okay, so the fact that you're out in Washington, and we can come back to what you were saying a minute ago, but I know Jacob last week, he alluded to his family came from California to Colorado, and you said your dad grew up in Michigan and then went out there. Do you see yourself moving again? Do you think you're good where you're at?
You know what? If I had my druthers, I mean, I would. The problem is, you get wife and family, and it makes it tough, and Jacob's family moved with ease, for a couple reasons. And for me, I'd be okay with it. I would. I'd have to work on my wife and convince her. I do like South Dakota. I'd love to move to South Dakota. To me, that's the future. I could see myself moving. I'm on 2 leased facilities. I mean, my business model has been to just continue to put capital into dairy cows and continue to grow the dairy herd and just keep leasing the land. And I've always had more land than I've needed. And it's worked out well. And so, the future is probably in the Midwest, and I probably would move. So
that's awesome. I think that's a really cool idea because most people anymore, and myself included, like, you had this land that they homesteaded on, like, they cut their teeth on the rocks that are in the driveway. I mean, it feels like for me, if I were to leave, it would be like I betrayed the 150 years of or not 150, I mean, 100 years of like bullshit they put up with. If you leave, it's like,
yeah,
like I should stay here and
exactly
honor
right.
that. But
Right. And see, that's unfair too, because you're letting emotion run your business, right? And I feel bad for people. You know, we see that on the dairy side too, that, hey, great grandfather started this dairy farm and, you know, we're still milking 50 cows. And, you know, well, you didn't adapt and change with the times, and you needed to adapt and change with the times. And then you're the one that makes the decision to go out because the industry has passed you by, and you're dealing with all this emotional baggage that you were the one that had to sell it. You know, when maybe it was your dad or your uncle that didn't make the necessary changes to grow and expand.
yeah,
You know, and I think we have to take emotion out of this business. I mean, the market doesn't give a shit what our cost of production is, you know, and so we have to constantly move to where the margins are.
Yeah. Very well said. I think you're right. I think that, you know, it makes perfect sense. And there is a reality of it's tied to emotion. And since we're on the subject of emotion, what are your thoughts? And it's just a random kind of question that I'll throw out there, but there's a lot of emotion involved in Twitter and a lot of things like that, with like a lot of Twitter drama. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, people get tied all kinds of knots with their emotions in there.
It's amazing. I mean, it's just like one big family reunion, you know, and somebody's hooking up with somebody's ex-wife, and it just blows up. And I mean, I stay out of it. I try and like do my thing and just stay to the sidelines. And yet there's people that really thrive on it.
Oh,
you know,
God.
And I don't mind the drama. I mean, I've had people call me out. I'm fine with people calling me out. What I don't like is there's a handful of people that anytime there's somebody that has a negative comment, they go and like that negative comment, you know, and consistently they're doing that. And it's like, okay, just have the, you know, testicular circumference to come out and just say you don't like me and call me out on my bullshit, you know? And, yeah, that I'm fine with people just calling each other out. I mean, as long as everybody's civil and, you know, it doesn't turn into a big festering thing, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
I had it with,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I just said, I've seen that where people will, they'll kind of make a living off of it. Like that's what they get up and they, you know, they obviously have a job, but that's like their thing is and you'll get caught in one of these threads. It's like 800 posts long. And you're like, are you done yet? Cause I got to get out of here. I can't quit popping up. Just leave. Let's leave it alone.
You got to mute it. Mute them all, man. Mute it all. I just get out of that. Yeah. Well, I had it. He was a bigger guy, and he was like a canola farmer in like Saskatchewan. He was kind of way out there, really aggressive. And me and him got into it like a year and a half ago, back and forth. And, you know, I was correcting his grammar, and it was with the $80,000 pickup thing. I said how stupid it was that you know, these guys are financing $80,000 pickup. Yeah. And you know, this is part of my job, and it's what I need, and so we were going back and forth, and you know, I was correcting his grammar and you know, insulting him, and I think it ended with me sending him a picture of his face as a meme with the face of herpes. And he didn't like that.
So you didn't hold anything back then. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I didn't post it. I just sent it to him privately because he had called me out. You know, and
that's even better. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna do it on the side. Right, exactly. But what the heck? You know, I'm fine with that. Somebody's out there. You know, they say their piece or whatever, but then we started talking, and I kind of liked the guy. You know, I mean, I appreciated him. I appreciated what he was saying, and you know, we opened up a little bit. You know, I mean, he had some struggles dealing with, you know, mental health problems in his family, and you know, I've dealt with some of the same thing in my family, and you know, we went back and forth, and I think we ended well. You know, I mean, I'd go and have a beer with the guy. You know. Well, and I think that's what I think. There's a lot of people that everybody just kind of wants to be right, and that's a human thing. I mean, hell, who doesn't want to be like, you know? At the end of the day, I want to say, well, look at me, I did this. I mean, everybody's feeding their ego on this thing, you know, at some point, even if they aren't. But yeah, that's got to be kind of, and well, speaking of feeding egos, I don't know what, and I kind of stay away from this subject, but I'd like to bring it up maybe, or you even brought it up in
Yeah.
the pre-show notes about advocating. And that's such a stupid word. I mean, I'm fine with people
Yeah.
doing it, but just shoot from the hip. What are your thoughts on that whole thing and the self-congratulatory
Yeah.
nature of it? But
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I mean, for advocating for me, it actually started. I was at the state fair with my show calf, and the state fair for us is down by Seattle, and some yoga pant wearing soccer mom comes in, and at the time BST was a big thing, and this is like a naturally occurring hormone that we give to dairy cows that makes them eat more.
okay,
And she was sitting there, and she said, "Do you feed your do you give your cows this BST?" And so I'm sitting there like trying to bite my ear and like smacking my chest, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we give it all the time, and I drink the milk. There's nothing wrong with me." You know? And
so
she turned three
you
shades
went.
of white, and yeah, no, so that was my first introduction into advocating was
You just had
interacting with the general public.
you had a seizure in front of the lady and explained to her that you had
Right.
a great time with that kind of substitute.
Yeah, that's right. With the hormones in the dairy cows, there's nothing wrong with me. So, the advocating thing. I mean, I think there's a time and a place for. Well, and that's the great thing about Twitter. Do you, right? I mean, I don't care if you want to, be the warrior. I mean, I agree that there's some of that self-congratulating, and it turns into a big pissing contest, and but at the same time, hey, there's some people that do a good job with it. I mean, my philosophy is a little bit different. I mean, I'm going out there and I just want to be genuine. I want to be funny, and so I want to capture the people and I want to engage them, and then they'll trust me when I say something about dairy or say something about GMOs or frame it in a way that makes sense. I mean, even talking to Vance Crowe from Monsanto, previously Monsanto, and he said too, back in the day, the only one that could say what he wanted to say and not lose his head was the court jester. And to me, comedy is a way to do that. If you know how to use it correctly, you can go and frame a positive agriculture spin on news articles and stories, and people will listen to you. I mean, it's the same reason why late night TV has turned into political. I don't agree with a lot of what they say, but I still tune in and watch some of it because, hey, they're funny. And then they're going to try and woo me and sway me to their ideology by putting their brand and their politics in it. And to me, that's more effective. I mean, the people that want to follow a Facebook page, with cute animals, and that's already done. That's already out there. And for me, I just wanted to do something different and be me, be genuine, and people that build the trust, and then it grows into something. There's a gal that follows me from the New York Times. She doesn't agree with anything I say. We talked about gender roles, and we've actually emailed back and forth. She doesn't agree with what I say, and she continues to follow me. Yeah. A gal from Bloomberg does. Talked to her a while back. That's how you make the inroads into the influencers.
Yeah.
Is just being consistent and being funny. And
you see, even if you don't know it, you might actually be like the top agavit. God, you might be the best spokesperson for farming and ranching that's out there, just because you simply are letting it go and letting it be what it is. You're not trying to be something you aren't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it flies in the face of a lot of people that are in the business of marketing. I mean, I'm not the most popular with the dairy marketing groups, because I don't toe the line. I'm unique. They can't control the message. In a lot of ways they want to control the message too. And
amen.
I'm
not the biggest. The beef checkoff people, I think, would rather I not say a lot of things that I say, but they're like,
right.
They're my tribe. They're the ones that I'm supposed to be. Yeah. You're supposed to kind of step in line. And I think if anybody that has maybe a little bit of a kind of a libertarian, or you're not going to always be on the left or the right, you're just going to be like, hey, go do your thing. And I think that's where, that's why people are drawn to you. I think that's why people like the fact that it's, you might be arguing or talking about something, and then when you go completely the other side of the spectrum, and they're like, well, he doesn't fit in the box that I've built for him. then that
Right.
shocks them. Like you come out of left field and get them. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And society has become that way, right? I mean, society is so much now, hey, we're going to, put your ideology into this box and we're going to make this who you are. When if you're funny and engaging and people aren't really sure where you're coming from, they can't label you or put you in a certain box.
You bet.
And that's how you have success. And to me, that's fun too. I mean, you have people that reach out and say, look, I don't agree with everything you say, but hey, I like following you. And well, my wife doesn't agree with most of what I say, and she still doesn't lock the door at night. So, I mean, it's right. And so that's how you break down barriers. And I think that's some of what we need to focus on too is breaking, just being genuine, being ourselves. Because I mean, for a lot of these people, it used to be their grandpa or their uncle that had the farm.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have any of that now. And for a lot of people, they don't want the romanticized version of the dairy. Be real with it. I mean, that was another crazy one. I had a difficult calving. We had a twins in a cow, and so I tweeted the picture. No, I started just complaining because, well, I do that once in a while. And
you don't
complaining about this difficult calving. Yeah, you deal with this difficult calving, and so I tweeted about it, and then I had a picture of it, and then it went horribly wrong. I mean, basically, the calves are stuck. So I call the vet out, and the vet comes out, and the vet's working on it, finally get the calves out. Well, I mean, the calves had torn, one of the main arteries inside the cow, and she was bleeding out.
Yeah, and she probably
died. I had to go. I had to go shoot her. I mean, we decided to put her out of her misery, right? And so, and once I started down that path, it's like, what do you do? I mean, I already put it out there. I mean, I could lie and oh, hey, this is where it is, but no, I mean, people need to hear what agriculture is and what's real, and so I put it out there.
I think you're spot on. I think we should do everything without the filters. I think we should make it all uncensored and just say, hey, here it is. Because I think we're doing a disservice to the public when we act like we need to kind of sugarcoat everything. I think if we just said, here
Absolutely.
it is, they're adults too. I mean, I think maybe we kind of are being a little patronizing when we're like, well, these city people can't handle this. Well, maybe they can.
Right.
Maybe we should be open and say, here you go. This is the reality of where your food comes from. Because every time you shelter it, it becomes even more. It's like you give power to the groups that want to shock the individual.
Yeah.
Because they've never seen animals in confinement. They've never seen, a sick animal. They've never seen an animal put down. So they take these things that we've hidden from the general public and they use them, almost kind of in a sadistic way. They've turned it around and used it against production agriculture. And I think it's a travesty that's happened.
Absolutely. We need to be 100% real with everybody. And it's kind of interesting because it's coming full circle. I mean, and in a lot of ways, I mean, you go out and say it. I mean, the left or the hippies, even in Seattle, they're coming back now and they're interested in butchering. Butchering now is exploding in popularity. And these are people that should be granola eating, hippies in town, you drinking oat milk, and they're going out and taking charcuterie classes and how to make sausage and in the culinary world, people want to know this stuff and they want to know where their food comes from, and we owe it to them to tell the story and blemishes and all, because if you don't have cows die, you don't have cows. I mean, what, livestock, dead stock, right? And
livestock dead stock. I've never heard that.
Yeah. No, we need to be honest with them, and I agree. It is patronizing, and they'll appreciate it when you are honest, and that builds credibility. And if somebody wants to do the filtered thing, then so be it.
Yeah. I have another question. So when we get into the idea of changing the mode and the filter and everything like that, do you think that actually changes the media that can be involved with this?
I do. I mean, you still got me there?
Yeah, I do. I think it bounced out, but now it's back.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the media is changing, right? Twitter, I mean, everybody's got their own reality show now. Everybody's got their own news media outlet. Facebook, go make a video, Facebook Live. You're seeing that on, cable networks. People are cutting the cord on cable networks. We're entertained by a lot of different ways. Podcasts.
Yeah,
everybody's doing a podcast.
You and I right here today. I mean, we're having this discussion that, I mean, I'm literally in a place that has 1,000 people in the town, and I'm hours and hours away from a major metropolitan area. I mean, I'm in a place that I should not have a voice. And that was the thing that kind of baffled me with Twitter, is that I shouldn't be someone that anybody would ever hear according to the old rules. But with the changing landscape and the technology that's out there, you and I had this discussion, and it'll be heard by a lot of people. And in fact, I'd venture to say probably even more than is on some current established platforms. So that's a changing media that I've witnessed just in my time.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And yeah, no, it's been to me, it's about bridging kind of that rural urban divide too. And that's what this is doing. That's what Twitter's doing. It's connecting people back to agriculture, and that needs to happen. And this is one way to do it.
Yeah. No, I think that the more people listen to this, and the more they hear kind of a new media setup, I think that, it's just like, I mean, I'm sure you probably did the same thing. Years ago, we had a satellite TV, we had this, that, everything. And then we got Netflix, and we ordered, we got the DVDs in the mail and sent them back. And that was a big deal. And then it became, we finally got bandwidth where we kicked all that crap out the window. And now all we watch is Netflix, Amazon, or something of that nature, where 10 years ago, everything was DVR. I mean, it's changed overnight. And I'll even go so far as to, I did a poll about who still has a landline phone. Because, I mean, you probably grew up with a landline phone, didn't you?
Absolutely.
And it was something like, and this is farmers. So, I mean, people that you would think would still hug to the landline, but it was almost 3/4 to 1/4 that didn't have it. And the people that did only had it begrudgingly. So, like, we grew up as kids with, that was your phone, that was your outlet. And now no one even has it in their house.
Right. No, I mean, just the other day, it was amazing. My 2.5, 3-year-old daughter, she was looking at a book, and it had like a dial ring phone in it with a cord attached to it. And she said, "What's that?" And this is a kid that, like,
torture device.
Exactly right. I mean, any square piece of cardboard is a cell phone to her. I mean, she's walking around, with square pieces of cardboard stuck to her ear.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, this is a phone.
They do that, don't they? And that's something that, I mean, how, dude, you show your kids, and obviously they're always smiling and laughing. I mean, I know kids don't do that all the time, but you seem like you really, really enjoy, like, being a father and a husband and all that. Like, how awesome are the kids and that kind of crazy stuff?
Yeah, I mean, kids are a blast, right? I mean, you get these humans that are experiencing all these things in the world for the very first time, and to be a part of that, it's exciting, right? And it's fun for me. I enjoy that, watching them grow and learn, and absolutely, it's with a ton of trial too, and a ton of effort, and it's hard work. I mean, we got 3 under 6 now, 6, 4, and 2.5.
You don't sleep much,
and so it's busy. Yeah, that's right. Well, I sleep fine. My wife doesn't. I mean, I'm out.
That's so true.
Yeah,
we had the experience last night. One of our younger, the kids always go to mom. It doesn't matter how, if you think you're like dad of the year, get a kid that has a nightmare and just see how high you rank, because you won't be there.
Yeah, exactly right. No, it is amazing. No, they're a blast, and to me, there's so much that they say and do that's just hilarious too, right? And so it's just Twitter gold.
Oh, God,
so often you just hear them say something, you're like, yeah. And I mean, some of it, you embellish it a little bit just to Twitter it up a little bit. But there's so many things where they just come up with stuff, and you're like, really? And I mean, that's awesome.
Well, and they kill it too. I mean, it's like you said, they will come up with something, and you're like, I'm almost a little bit jealous sometimes. Like, why didn't I think of that? Like, how did they just pull that out of the thin air? And it was like, that is comedy gold. And you high five them, and you think, hey, there's potential here. We can do something.
Absolutely. No, it's been a blessing. I love the heck out of them, and it'll be interesting to see them grow up, right? I mean, every age there's different trials and different personalities, and trying to parent to each personality is unique and different too. So
yeah. So what I'm sure as they grow up, they'll listen to this podcast one day, or that'd be kind of cool if they did. So, can you go on the record now for which one is your favorite?
They're like seed salesmen. There's no favorite. Whoever buys you the best lunch.
I fully endorse that. I have a rotating favorite list, and I'll even pit them against each other and be like, hey, last week
right,
your sister did this, and then I'll kind of watch the wheels turn. I'll be like, well, hey, she's got a little effort, and as long as they don't go full prison yard, I'm good with that. But
yeah. How is that work in rural Oklahoma out there? I mean, you guys homeschool everybody, and that's something that's completely foreign to me. You're around them all the time, aren't you?
I am. No, I don't. We don't homeschool. Oddly enough, this is kind of a tangent, but in doing this podcast, I've ran into a lot of people that have homeschooled their kids or were homeschooled themselves. So I think that's one way to make yourself very interesting is to grow up in a homeschool environment. Probably because you talk to yourself and all that kind of stuff. But no, our kids go to regular school, and
okay.
We've got 6 of them, and it's really fun. It's never a dull moment. And I've told people this: we will walk into a restaurant or whatever, and you got 6 kids around you. You don't think about it; it's just normal to us. But to this day, I'll watch somebody walk in and they've got like 4 or 5 kids, and I'm like, God, look at that poor bastard. He's got like 5 kids around him and the wife and but I don't see it in ourselves because we're genuinely happy, and sometimes that maybe it's just that it's other people don't look that way, but I love it. In fact, I grew up in a big family, and so did my wife, and never really set out to have a big family, but now that I do, I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't. I think it's great. You get that many kids, they feed off each other, and it's its own ecosystem, really. But
I agree. You just gotta raise the first one right, and the rest fall in line, right?
Well, actually, I think it may be the other way around. You kind of fumble around with the first couple, and you like, not that it's like you 3 downs and you punt, and then you do it. Then the second one comes along, and then like by the time you get to the end, it's like, hey, we got this figured out. Like they know how to do this. So, but no,
right, yeah.
I would argue anybody that said that with large families or even small families, like, oh, we treat all our kids the same. It's like bullshit. No, you treated the first one like they were a prince or a princess, and you treated them like they were gold. And by the time you got to the last one, you treated them like you should. Like you treat them like a parent relationship. There's adults have to grow up too, in my opinion. I don't think that is. Yeah. I think that's people think that you arrive at an age and you know everything. You just arrive at an age and you've been around longer than everybody else, but you don't necessarily, you didn't pick it all up along the way.
Yeah.
Well, and
no,
I mean, I don't know. It's crazy when you get into the parent side of things, because that's a whole nother tangent that a guy could go down. But
yeah,
I'm going to jump back to the dairy thing real quick. And just because I raise beef cattle and you raise dairy, and I mean, I want to say this in a nice way. I look at dairy cattle; they're kind of like hacky jokes to the beef industry. And what are your thoughts on the dairy versus beef, like beef that's out there sometimes? Do you feel that we're all in the same deal? Because I've actually gotten like almost ran off of Twitter because I used to make fun of people with Holsteins, but I don't really despise them. I just like to poke fun at them. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, I get the feeling that these guys are the one taking the girl home at 2:00 in the morning that everybody else is kind of bypassed. I don't know. No,
you think we're just scrounging for leftovers out here? Well, I mean, it's there is an interesting thing, because I don't know. I guess they've always slaughtered dairy cattle for meat, and they are meat. They are cattle. There's no denying that. But there is the beef guys, myself included, we do have kind of a little chip on our shoulder, like, hey, we should be the preferred, carcass that's hanging on the rail.
Right.
And
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
from your side of the aisle, because you're just raising an animal just like we are. Do you ever feel like, hey,
Right.
screw those guys? I mean, do you want to one up us by making a better Holstein carcass and just
Uh-huh.
show us up at the
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so for me, I mean, I'm doing a lot of jerseys right now. So, I mean, carcass value on jerseys is nothing. And, maybe you could speak better to me on the Holstein side of it, what they're getting out of the Holstein carcass versus not. Um, yeah, that's definitely a part of the equation is carcass value for us and capturing that. The Holstein thing is interesting. Yeah, this past summer, I went to a feedlot in Eastern Washington, Simplot. I don't know. They're a fairly large company, and this will piss you off even more. But I mean, there's a lot of dairy guys now that are switching to beef on dairy. Just because we went and we screwed up our own heifer market. We use sex semen on heifers. We use sex semen on milk cows. And the numbers that I've seen is there's about 10 million heifers and 9 million dairy cows. So it's 1 million too many. And so we've got way too many. And so for me, I'm breeding 70% of my milking herd now to beef, and we've got a contract with this grower for Charolais. He wanted Charolais. And so the Simplot guys, they feel like the Charolais on dairy, even on the Jersey, they can come out with a better ribeye. And so what that displaces, I don't know. I mean, I went there and talked to the feed yard, and they said they want to get rid of the Holstein bull calves. They don't want a single Holstein on their feedlot because they're sitting there destroying the feedlots. And then they try and run them through the slaughter plants, and they're too big. It just messes everything up. They got to readjust, resize. And they'd rather have continuity and consistency. And so they don't want a single Holstein on their place. And to me, that's the market that we're displacing. And I understand the sentiment, right? I mean, I understand the frustration. Hey, we're the ones that are putting AB positive animals in the food line, right? I mean, there's frustration with that. I understand that completely. And even this.
It's interesting. I've never heard that concept where you're taking, because the calf is kind of a byproduct, because you want the lactation, you want her to stay in. And so now, I mean, it's a brilliant move if you can put, made it to a Charolais or some kind of beef and get some of that heterosis, then yeah, you put them in the feedlot, they'd probably actually do just as good or better than a big chunk of the current beef herd that's out there.
Yeah, and some of the appeal is we're putting the best genetics in these dairy cows, and we're going to the packers and saying, hey, this is the top genomic bull in the Charolais industry, and this is the sire of this animal, and they want that. There's value in that, and it's going to be interesting. And I mean, I wanted to bring it up just so you guys know what's coming too. I mean, don't stick your head in the sand with it, and maybe it doesn't have that big of an impact. I don't know, but if you talk to the AI companies by us, and they're running out of beef semen. They can't keep enough beef semen in the pipeline. It's either sexed with the best, Holstein and Jersey in the industry, and everything else is beef. And to me, my heifer program got so big that I'm raising 40 to 50 more heifer calves a month than I actually need, and that's just been killing me every month for cash flow. And so I have to right size that. And so I'm going out and breeding that heifer program now still to sexed genetics, because your heifer program's your most advanced genetics anyway.
Yeah.
And going and taking the milk cows and breeding 70, 80% of the milk cows to beef. Right now I'm selling heifer calves for $30. Nobody wants a heifer calf. I can go in, and we're still, bottom of the market here on the, we're kind of an island out here, but we're getting 130 to 150 bucks for a day old cross calf, beef dairy cross calf.
That's crazy, man. That's insane because it just kind of blew my mind for a minute when I think about the size and the scope of how many dairy cattle are out there. And if everybody applies this logic, I guess before you always had a marker of, you knew an animal was a dairy animal because it looked like a squad car. There was black and white, and
right.
You know where that, and I'm just going to throw a little beef acronym. You know where that piece of shit came from. It was like,
exactly right.
There was always a way to do it, and now you guys have you cloaked it, you've went and camouflaged the damn thing. and I say that half-heartedly joking, but in all seriousness, it's a brilliant move, and the beef quality should, get better with that. And I don't fault you one bit. I mean, I fault as much as anything, maybe the beef side of the non-dairy side of cattle industry for not kind of moving forward with the times of figuring out how to do that. I mean, I know people that use method genetics and a lot of the genomic, if you can do that in your ranking, like you said, the heifers are always your best genetics. You can take that and within 2 or 3 generations, you can change an entire cow herd's makeup really, really quick. So the idea that you have to keep, the old cows that you got all these genetics in, sometimes that's bad. Like maybe you should get rid of all those cows. I mean, just because they've been around forever doesn't mean that they're, somehow more efficient, better, or more useful. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, and the genomic thing is interesting on the dairy side too. I mean, they're going out now and genome testing all the dairy cows and saying, well, this mother is in the top, 50% or 25%. Well, we're going to breed her to sex. And then the bottom gets bred to beef. And when you take a sire, and there's, smarter people than me that can explain it, but it's a lot slower transition breeding a crappy cow to a really rock star sire to turn her around. But when you have a really good dam, a lot of those traits are more transmittable than using good bulls on your herd. And so there's a lot of that being done too. As far as the impact, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, we're not a big market. I mean, we're 9 million dairy cows. I mean, say you get 30% using it. I mean, that's still 1.8 million beef, but then it's going to, some of that would have been Holsteins anyway, and then you're also I think a 40 or 50 million cow beef herd. What impact does that have, do you think?
This is where my mind goes to is you've got in the typical beef cycle, it's been like up and down, and you'll have droughts and a few things like that affect that have a detrimental or positive effect upon that beef cycle. And that's all based upon weather and forage resources. So there's a natural element to that cycle. And I think when you put in like this beef substitute of these dairy cattle that is almost a kind of a guaranteed, it doesn't matter if rain, shine, whatever, that's not captive supply, but it's a safe alternative that is going to cushion that blow maybe to traditional beef producers, because there's always going to be a certain supply that, I mean, you guys are going to raise them come hell or high water. So, if there's when there's a drought here and guys sell out whole herds, like that mother's gone. She's not going to be there producing the calf the next year. Where you guys, you're going to flush those cows. You're going to make them lactate. You're going to be raising a calf every year. So that variability within the calf crop maybe has disappeared. So that in a way it helps because it smooths things out. But sometimes when you get these crazy off the wall scenarios where, hey, we're selling all these cattle in Oklahoma and Texas because of a drought, that spikes the price, which in turn gives an opportunity because of volatility, because of the unknown. So by producing these cattle that are a known quantity that people know are going to be there year after year after year. I mean, it's like Midwest corn. It's like, it's going to be there every year. So why get too carried away or upset? So that to me is a backdoor negative in my world, because I'd like to have a little more Wild West of, hey, yeah, it didn't rain in somewhere that produces cattle. And so now we have an opportunity to market at a higher price. So, and that's just a different realm, but we're all still selling the same thing. I mean, you can't, I'd love for someone to go lay the 2 steaks out and say, all right, tell me which one is the Angus and which one is the Charolais Jersey. I mean, you probably couldn't tell a difference once they were fed, slaughtered, marketed, and everything else. But I have a question. Are you guys subject to the beef checkoff too? I mean, do you have to pay that for every time an animal changes hands?
We do actually, and I mean the beef checkoff, but then also even right now we're dealing with it in Washington State where our brand commission is $1 million in the hole. I mean, it's been so mismanaged. It's just a complete. I mean, it's government in the beef world. It's just been nuts. But no, we are subject to that. Every time we sell a cow, the beef checkoff was struggling in our state. So even even Jersey bull calves, a lot of them get sent to slaughter right away. I mean, and we're having to buy $3 tags and basically paying $3, and then we get nothing for the calf. And that's part of the reason why I'm switching too, is the Jersey bull calf. You know, people don't like this either, but a lot of it gets turned into dog food, you know? And so I'm taking a calf that's costing me, because we're still taking care of them. We're giving them colostrum. We're dipping navels. You have the labor on it. Plus you have to buy a $3 beef commission tax, and then you get nothing for the calf.
You have to buy a $3 tag, because we don't do that here. This is all new to me.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's and this is just on the calves. If you wanna send them out, is you have to buy this tag. It's called the Green Tag Program, and it was actually implemented by the dairy industry. The beef checkoff came to us in our state, or the beef commission in our state, and they were struggling, and asked us to do more. And shit, I mean, you think dairy industry is splintered? I mean, I'm involved in a little bit with that too, and we've tried to, on other occasions, to increase it to help out the beef commission. And you get these splinter groups on the beef side that, I mean, they're just opposed to it, and they're just standing in the way of it. And so that's been frustrating, as we're trying to support the commission and, keep it going. And we understand, I mean, we're definitely, that's part of us too, and we're putting money into it. So.
Yeah. And I think that's something that is going to come to a head, because you just see it all over and over and over again, the constant battle about, the checkoff and there's got to be some kind of resolution to this. I mean, my theory is let's get everybody involved. If you want, let's keep paying this $1, but let's get the packers, the retailers, the wholesalers, everybody get invested.
Right.
Let's really throw this money towards something, and let's quit making goofy ass. I think a lot of it is they make things to placate their people who are paying the money, because they don't want to hear people bitching.
Right.
And you and I both know the approach to get to people is to go directly in this form or fashion. So why aren't we doing that kind of marketing is my question.
Right. I agree 100%. Well, and I mean, we're in the single digit profit margin business. I mean, it's pretty freaking lean, on the commodity level. And yet we're asked to do the marketing for these other companies. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's crazy.
For the end users who are in the double-digit margin. I mean, they're in the, the retail sector is, no one wants to talk about their profit margin versus the producer, but there's a giant dichotomy there. Right. Absolutely right. And also, I mean, the numbers are just staggering, like on the dairy side too. I mean, it's $200 million, I mean, upwards of that every year that gets, put into that kind of stuff. Well, and what happens is there's no way to quantify success. How do you quantify success? And so eventually it just gets run like government. They keep adding layers and keep adding fat, and there's no accountability and no way to say, oh, hey, this is really paying off. And so that's the frustration. And those groups are feeling it, in the dairy side too. And I think they're starting to do a better job. Not only do you have to go out and do a good job of marketing the dairy industry and the dairy products, but now you have to go back and tell the dairy producers what a good job you did, because a lot of us get cynical too, right? Yeah. And then that costs money. I mean, you're selling yourself on both ends, and then you ask, well, I mean, how worth it is it? Yeah. Well, the people, I mean, I don't think they're bad people. I mean, really, that's where you got to take a step back and think, these are individuals who are, I mean, we're on the same team, and you see this all the time in especially like social media and everything else. Like, I guess it's kind of like family infighting. Like, we just are going to go at each other. Absolutely. And the thing about families is, where to hit. Like, that thing that's going to get them. I mean, honestly, if you could fight the biggest, toughest son of a bitch in the world in a bar, you'd probably be better off than fighting like somebody who knows you and knows where to hit. And so you see it. I mean, there's infighting amongst, organizations that are there to represent your commodity, and I don't know the solution for it, but it is kind of a crazy, almost like family fights in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, and a lot of times, they're scared of that and they don't want that, but a lot of that's healthy too. I mean, if you don't have some level of disagreement, that's not a good sign either. If somebody just doesn't care, they've checked out emotionally, and that's the same thing with this checkoff thing. I mean, They need to hear what the frustrations are, right? And well, I ran into the beef commission gal I asked too, and they made a video, and you wouldn't believe it. They put it on Facebook, and they got 12,000 views on their video on Facebook. And then I put a picture, a video of my daughter running around, and it gets 56,000, views on Twitter. Right?
You're like, I hate to point these numbers out to you, but you might be a little bit off. No, you're right.
Right.
That's what's crazy is when you look at it, when I first started looking at how many times things that I said got seen by people, I kind of stopped for a moment and said, that can't be right. There's no way in hell that many people and if they did, God help them, because they had to endure that many times of seeing what I said. But the leverage that is allowed to personalities on social media is absolutely insane. And we're literally doing all this for free. We haven't spent a single dime promoting anything. We just done it on sheer smart ass. Right. So why can't we inject some of that smart ass culture into these, organizations? Maybe that would help them. Get a little edgy on some of their stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's been a real push from those organizations to grow the grassroots. And they say, well, they want to hear from the producers. They want to hear from the producers. Well, yeah, then why are we spending so much money on your stuff? Right? And why can't we go out and why can't we go out and support some of these people financially? There's some people on the dairy side that do a good job of, painting a picture of the dairy industry. I think we should pay them.
Yeah, just like a paid spokesperson in any other industry, but it would almost be sacrilegious if you were to take some of that money and give it back to a producer who has a voice. It's asinine that we aren't doing it. It's kind of back to the argument of, shouldn't you pay college football players? They're the one doing the work.
Right.
Everybody's cashing in on them.
Right. Well, and there's no person in the organization making $60,000 a year that you can fire and then divvy that up amongst kind of the grassroots people. Really?
Yeah. Well, there probably is, but everybody guards their own, because if Jim Bob over in marketing loses his job, then the next thing you know, they'll be coming for Sally in accounting, and hell, before too long, they're going to get Tim over in programming, because God knows we need a VHS camcorder out there filming some shit, because that's gonna convert people to eat more beef or drink more milk. And I want to get into real quick, because just your milk guy and as a beef guy, I really am not envious of all the batshit crazy stuff that you guys have to battle with your soy milk, almond milk. You guys have people I guess we're starting to get into it with the quote lab meat, fake meat. I'm not too worried. Maybe I should be, but what are your thoughts on all these things that slap, they make it, call it milk, and boom, there you go. What do you do with that?
Yeah. I'm always a little bit more of a realist. And so I try not to stress out about things that are out of my control. I focus on my bubble and my world and leave that to where it is. We've seen fluid milk sales collapse, and yet we're still spending all this money marketing it. And at the same time, dairy consumption is the same, if not growing. People are consuming dairy in different manners. They're going out and consuming yogurt and more cheese and, some of these other products. Yeah. And so do you fear it? It's just something you gotta duck and dodge and keep finding ways to be better. And it's going to happen. You basically take 4 almonds, you put them in water and a bunch of, whatever it is. Long list of stuff. And you've got a gallon jug, and you sell it for the same price, if not more, as a milk carton. The margins on that are astronomical.
Yeah.
And they've been trying to do that forever. And I think, you talk about the lab meat. We saw it in the dairy industry with margarine. I grew up eating margarine just because we didn't have any money, and margarine was cheap and made a canola oil.
That's right? Okay. And wait a minute. We're not going to bypass that. As a dairy guy, you used to have the country crock boat in your refrigerator. Oh, damn. I think I lost you.
Oh, there we go. I lost you there. Lost you.
No, I said as a dairy guy, you grew up with country crock in your refrigerator?
I did grow up with country crock in my refrigerator.
That's got to be sacrilegious. That's got to be like
I know
on the third level of shit you don't do as a dairyman.
I know it. I mean, we came from Dutch immigrants. I mean, we're really cheap. I mean, we used to save.
You Dutch people like run it must be a Dutch dairy mafia somewhere that I'm not aware of.
The Holstein cow, it comes from Holland, right? And so they brought that over, and it definitely a lot of the Dutchmen that came across, they wanted to get into the dairy thing, you know. But
yeah.
We grew up on that.
I mean, it's something that it was a product that was made to mimic what you make.
Absolutely.
And that's
right.
got to be like a little bit of I hate to use this language, kind of a mind fuck for somebody that's like, you got to be like, that's not real. What are you doing? That's vegetable oil.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. But that's done all the time, right? You have a high quality product, and then people try and imitate it with something cheaper and say this is what it is, and try and create a knockoff. I mean, it's like Rolexes with 2 E's. I mean, there's a market for it. You know, people want them. You know. I mean, they don't want to spend the money on the stuff. But there's a new phenomenon now too with this juuling. People, you know, not cigarettes, but it's basically nicotine and vapor water. I mean, that's going to have a huge impact on the tobacco industry.
See, Altria,
the large, they own Marlboro. Altria came out and bought a huge portion of Juul at a huge valuation, because they see that's where the future is going on that. I mean, you're not getting any of the negative impact of smoking cigarettes, but yet you still get the high from the nicotine, and it's in a water form, and they make it for pennies, you know, a Juul, and the market and the margins on that are huge. And so that's happening in every industry, you know, and so we can't be a victim about it and say, you know, woe is us. We have to keep getting better, and it's going to make margins tight. And I think we should caveat it a little bit. I mean, there is a lot of good work done by the Beef Commission and the dairy side too, right? I mean, our market share has grown. You know, we're exporting more product than ever before. So there is a place for it, you know. And so when I'm critical of it, it's not saying that, hey, you know, we should fire everybody and you guys don't do anything. I mean, I think they are growing our business. And so, I just think that, dude, they should have some accountability.
That was a sweet save, because somebody in the Beef Commission or Dairy Commission just marked your name off of the mirror, and you are good. You're golden. They're going to be like, Faber's one of the good guys. He's no longer, anti-us. and you speak about the Marlboros and that kind of thing. Let's jump into something that we discussed a little earlier or before we start recording. Was weed became legal up there in Washington. I'm just curious, as a guy who lives, I mean, it was just approved in Oklahoma for medical use and all that kind of stuff. What's it been like? Have you lived there prior to and then after? Like, have you seen the transition in society from whenever it went from, you know, the devil's lettuce to, okay, everybody can have it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, what was it? I think about a year and a half ago, they legalized it. It had been legal for medical use for quite some time.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much difference myself. I mean, it's a huge revenue generator for the state. I'm more of a libertarian, and you guys do what you want. You know, it's not really my jam, but go out and, you know, legalize it and then tax the heck out of it. You know, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy that's a state patrol officer, and he's had to go. He's seen people that have died from the combination of alcohol and weed, where he said, when you smoke weed and you drink alcohol, he's seen where you have the confidence from the alcohol to drive, but then you don't have the ability and your perception is off from the weed. And he's yeah.
Sounds like it might not work out too well for them.
Right, exactly. Kind of pick your poison, you know. And so he's against it for that reason. I mean, he's seen a different side of it, or a different, you know, side to the argument. And, you know, and yet at the same time, you talk to another sheriff buddy, he said, I've only feared for my life dealing with drunk people.
You bet.
I mean, anybody that's high, you bring a bag of Cheetos and, you know, you can get them to do whatever they want. And, you know, and so I'm fine with it. I mean, I was expecting there's going to be, you know, all these DUIs or whatever they call it now. I don't know what it would be, but yeah, there's people have been fairly responsible, and it's not like it turned into some big epidemic where you've got, people killing everybody by jumping in their cars high. A lot of times they're the ones that are going 25 and a 50. So you're more likely a rear end risk than anything, I think.
Yeah. It is kind of funny though, whenever the fear mongering side of, and I can go with you on this with the libertarian bent, the best way to keep people from having freedom is to scare the living piss out of them. Be like, look, if you do this, can you imagine what's going to happen the minute that these people get a hold of something? And then whenever they do, and like the world doesn't go to hell in a handbasket, it's like, oh, well, let's just kind of ignore what we talked about. And then it becomes commonplace and then they move on. But, prior to something being implemented, it's like, if this happens, God help us all, because it's all going down from there. I mean, and that's just not with recreational drugs. I'm talking about, you pick your poison on if Republicans, if Democrats get in, the next thing you know, we're all going to be enslaved in the socialist camp. And if Democrats think, Republicans get in, we've got to march in the streets and have, just like something out of, Russia or Germany. It's this insane argument that fear is what is going to, the fear of the unknown, and they twist that against people to almost keep their thumb on their liberties, is how I see it.
Right. And it's amazing the cultural differences, right? I mean, you go to the Middle East and hashish and marijuana, it's socially acceptable out there. I mean, it's very common, but then they'll stone people if they're drinking alcohol, and alcohol is the one that's frowned upon. And yet in the Western culture, we've adopted alcohol as being fine, and marijuana and hashish as being bad. And yet, I mean, you talk to, I would argue that alcohol is more dangerous and kills more people than weed does.
You bet.
And yet at the same time, I mean, for a lot of people, your perception of weed is, the pothead dropout in college that couldn't hold down a job.
Yeah.
And that becomes kind of the face of pot smoking. And yet there's many people that use it recreationally, like a beer or like a glass of wine, and they're fine from it. I think the only real negative research was in younger kids, as your brain's developing. Mm-hmm. If you smoke marijuana as a young child, then it really has an impact on your cerebral ability. But as you get older, it has less of no less so anyway than alcohol. But.
Yeah. Well, I would think that the same would hold true if, an 8-year-old was throwing back Jack Daniel sliders. He might suffer later in life.
Right. No, absolutely.
I mean, as a general
grew up without a daddy.
Anything that adults enjoy probably shouldn't be utilized by children, and that's going to keep most of them safe. But
absolutely.
So as a person who has, a libertarian bent, what are your thoughts on, and this is another subject, is like environmental regulations, because that is essentially the government saying, this is what we are going to do. And out here, right. I mean, we're pretty lax because frankly, there's no people. So it's very, very hard to assemble a mob to come after the farmers out here. Now, where there's a lot of people and it's beautiful and people want to live there, I would imagine that it's much harder to negotiate that contract with the general public. But tell me some of the stuff you've dealt with.
Right. I mean, I live in a very liberal area. I mean, when I pump manure on the fields for nutrients, I mean, I've got pissed off lesbians driving Priuses taking pictures of the tractors going through the field. No, I mean, literally.
Specifically pissed off lesbians in Priuses, and only where you're at.
Right. I mean, usually I'm able to use all of this, right here, but I have no effect on them. So, but no, I mean, I've had those engagements. There's somebody pulled over, you go and talk to them, they're taking pictures. You explain, hey, we're applying, our cow manure and agronomic rate. It's limiting the use of chemicals and pesticides and, fertilizer. And, oh, that's so amazing. You're doing such a good job. And then I get a phone call from Washington State Department of Agriculture the very next day, and she had called the EPA. And the EPA wanted them to check on me and see what I'm doing wrong. And so you have these people that are disconnected from agriculture, and these people, you're never going to win them over. You're never going to win them over. and we're dealing in by us now, the Puget Sound. We're right by the ocean, 5-10 miles from the ocean. Yeah, it's amazing to me that dairy, that beef. I mean, we're going to be the scapegoat on all of this. So we're seeing shellfish now, that have, high nitrates in the shellfish, and we're the problem, we're the cause. And yet you go up to Vancouver Island, the city of Victoria is pumping the sewage from 600,000 people every day into the ocean. Yep. And they say, oh, it's fine. We're going so many miles out and it's totally fine. And these people, I mean, it's such human nature where they're willing to look past their carbon footprint, their impact on the world, but they're quick to find a scapegoat and say, well, you need to do a better job and you're the problem, and it's so frustrating.
It's a get out of jail free guilt card is how I look at it, because I think you're dead on. I think when you look at the urban footprint and the raw sewage it gets pumped out of, I mean, people don't want to recognize this, but cities are essentially giant feedlots is what they are.
Yeah.
It's just human are the people, humans are the product of that feedlot. But at the same time,
absolutely,
there's all that waste, there's all that garbage, there's all that stuff that comes out of it. And I think it's very convenient. And I've noticed this in the last maybe 4 months. It has gotten crazy, the amount of stop eating meat because you're going to kill the planet. I mean, it used to be, everybody's had their time in the barrel. At one point it was nuclear plants are going to kill everybody. Then it was hairspray. Then it was, it's like now it's meats turned in the barrel. It feels like, I don't know who
Yep.
gets together and decides, hey, this month we're going to go after these people. But it seems like an organized group, in my view.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and you go, and by every metric, the world today is a more peaceful place. It's a more prosperous place. There's less murders. There's less rapes. There's less racism. There's less disease. I mean, in every metric, we're at the best point we've ever been. And
yes.
So what comes with that is there's an inherent desire to be the victim, and this inherent desire to, well, I'm going to make the world better. And so they go out and try and find something that's wrong. And so they go out and create this, this problem and this situation that they're the ones that are they're gonna solve it. And I mean, I feel the same way about global warming. I mean, couldn't you have picked something that you didn't need, like every dollar that that the world has made to fix a problem? I mean, that's essentially what they're saying. It's a giant tax grab. And I mean, I would concur that the globe is warming. I mean, I see it myself here. I believe it's happening. And yet at the same time, I don't know that man is the one that's causing it. I think the earth goes through natural warming and cooling cycles. Yeah. And now to go and say, well, what happens if you're wrong and you're taking, 10% of GDP from every single country and using that to fix the problem. And then we find out in, 100 years, oh, we're cooling again. We need to warm this sucker back up.
Well, I think they would kind of all in unison on the UN floor, just be like, my bad, man. Hey, let's do something else. I mean, sorry, I got dibs on next game. My bad. I think they would just kind of shrug it off like, well, we meant well. I mean, and I think that is
right.
That's a consequence of, the hero mentality. I think everybody, my personal opinion is, I think people have it so good that they need to create strife in their life. I mean, they need to find a dragon to slay. They've got to have something to overcome. I mean, you look at some poor miserable son of a bitch that's out there slaving away in some job he works his ass off. He's probably pretty damn happy at the end of the day when he goes home and he's with his wife and kids and he doesn't have to deal with what he's doing. His life's probably pretty good. But if your right. job is cushy and you make a nice income and there's not a lot of stresses other than the stock market went down and, my 401k might be a little bit down this month. And, there's make-believe problems, but nobody really fears for their life. I mean, in some ways, I'm very blessed that every now and then there's a mad cow that might come after me and want to kill me because it keeps it real. It's like,
right.
I'm going to step into these animals. They can kill me if they put their mind to it. They literally could kill me en masse. So that's always in the
Yeah.
back of your head. Like death is ever present. And for people that don't deal with that don't get out and get shit on their shoes, that's got to be sad, man. If you had to go through life and live in that kind of sterile environment, hell, I guess I'd be like them. I'd be like, you know what? Screw those cows. They're doing something wrong. I mean, I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you make people not suck at life. But
And I mean, I think it speaks to people that are unhappy with their life or unhappy in general. And they say, well, I'd be much happier if this was better or that was better. And this is the reason why I'm unhappy. And picking up the sword and saying, well, this will be my cause and I'm going to change the world, and not acknowledging how good things are. I mean, you go to the grocery store. I mean, I can eat blueberries year round. I mean, in the frozen tundra of the North. I mean, what's up with that, right? I mean,
you shouldn't have blueberries. Right. You shouldn't have access to that, but you do.
Right. And I mean, having running water and a toilet, I mean, you're in the top 1% of society for the last, 5,000 years. I mean, we've got it so good, freaking good right now. And yet there's still this desire to find out what's wrong and look, and blame other people. So,
well, and maybe it's kind of maybe the next step in agriculture is a return to its roots marketing plan of come be miserable with us. Like people seek out misery. I mean, you could almost be like, hey, come out here. We're going to set you in the coal pen. And obviously there's usually one or two psychos that'll come after you and be like, we're going to play tag the calf. And you have this, and you go tag that calf, and we're not going to tell you which mother is the crazy one. But when they get done with that, they're probably going to be like, you know what? My suburban life kicks ass because there's nothing trying to kill me today. But it's all about perspective. I don't know. I mean, and how do you? I haven't mastered that. How do you share perspective like that? I mean, other than just people chiming in and listening to something like this, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of being genuine. I mean, we see it by us too. I mean, the gentleman farms. I mean, people coming from Seattle, and they're doing that. They're going sleeping in an old farmhouse, and they're going out and slopping pigs and feeding cows, and they're paying for the experience.
You're shitting me.
And I think
you're not. This isn't a joke. People are actually.
Oh no.
See, this is that Twilight Zone, man. I don't get.
Yeah.
They do that. They'll want to come. There's some truth to the miseries aspect of this.
I agree. No, and I mean, there's something. I mean, I have it too. I mean, so for me, my day, I mean, it's becoming more and more managing people, managing employees, and if I have a day where I'm busting my butt and I'm like covered in dirt and sweat and whatever, working in the fields, when you're standing in that shower and you're tired and exhausted and you see like dirt going down the drain, there's something physically rewarding about that.
You bet.
And we see that too. I mean, dirty jobs. I mean, people that have blue collar jobs that are busting their butt, a lot of times emotionally are in a better place than the CEO that's making $5-10 million a year.
Yeah.
He's sitting there worried about raising some spoiled little shithead, that wants to be, that you have to take care of till the guy's, 45 and he's not moving out and doing anything because they got raised with everything.
Yes.
I mean, I had a tough upbringing too. I mean, it was middle class, but I mean, it wasn't glitz and glamour, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. I mean, I have it now where, I used to go home to milk 1 o'clock every day. We'd have to go home and milk. My mom would milk, I would milk. And I hated doing it. And yet today, when 1 o'clock rolls around and I'm not milking cows, it's like, sweet, this is a good day, because I know what it could be like, or I know what it was like.
You bet.
And I wouldn't trade that for the world. You don't know how good you have it unless you live a life without and a life of quote unquote misery.
Yeah.
And I think then you appreciate it.
And I think that's an interesting point. I was the same way. Like I didn't grow up on a farm. I mean, my dad or stepdad, he was a basketball coach and high school principal. My mom was a college professor. My grandparents farmed, and my dad was a veterinarian out in Oregon. He was the one tied to the farm, but so I ended up back on a farm and ranch, but I didn't grow up on it. So, I mean, I grew up doing work on the farm and ranch, and it was very rewarding to go do that. But as a person who has done it for, God, 20 some years now, managing it, it's nice to not have to go build fence. I mean, I can do it and it's rewarding,
Yeah.
but there's days that it's like, yeah, I know why I don't build fence anymore. or as But so now the question becomes, and I'll ask you this as a father, and you have kids. There's a fine line. Do you withhold not niceties, or I mean, there's a certain amount of things you want your kids to have a good upbringing, but part of what makes people interesting, and this was back to the original point, is people that grew up in harsh environments tend to be more interesting. They have a better perspective on life, and they just understand how the world works. So do you make it nice for your kids, or do you try to put an edge on them by just kind of gleaning off the good stuff, maybe making it a little harder than it should be? Because everybody's goal is to take care of their kids and make sure they have a great upbringing, but at the same time, you don't want to go too far, because then you're going to have, like you said, a 45-year-old stay-at-home kid, and nobody wants that shit.
No, exactly. That is tough, right? And it is nice with the farmer, access to the farm. I feel sorry for people that are trying to raise kids in the city. I mean, there's not much there to do. I mean, I'll go and take my kids on the tractor, go and take them to the farm. And I think Jacob talked about it a little bit too. It gets to the point where it's so big that you can't just pull a guy off from his job and say, "Hey, kid, now put in 12 hours,
like, hey,
and knock this shift out."
Hanaro, go do something else while I go put my guy on you, on your job, because he's going to be like, "Well, screw you. I need that job, not your kid." I mean,
exactly right, exactly. But no, there's definitely something to that. It's simple stuff, and just showing them, tagging calves or going out there and doing things here and there. And it doesn't have to be all day, every day. It's just, hey, once in a while, taking them out and the shiny things in life. I mean, I think it's a millennial concept, but I prefer having experiences over things. I mean, I'd rather go and take my kids to the water park for the day and spend the time with them, or, go on that trip, stay at a house by the ocean and, watch them play in the sand, versus buying the latest toy and the latest gadget. To me, that has value. That's creating memories. Your kid's not going to remember that remote control, four-wheeler, the battery-powered four-wheeler that you bought them, but they will remember that trip that you went on.
But what if they took the remote control battery-powered four-wheeler on the trip? Then they would be like, I remember that shit. Like, I ran that battery-powered four-wheeler right up that mountain, and it was so cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. We do that. We take off and take the kids, and we're like the Griswolds, man. We stop at like family roadside attractions, or like state parks where there's volcanoes, or just goofy shit that, probably considered like old time traveling. I would much rather do that. And you go and your kids are running around like a crater of a volcano. That's cool shit. Versus, we've done the whole, gone to the Great Wolf Lodge where they're in this paradise of kid pleasure. And, you gotta let them, I think you gotta let them see a little bit of everything, because if they see the good, they see the bad, as much as anything, you need to give them a frame of reference. And then as they get older, you hope that they do their best to decipher. I mean, we all we all think we've got it figured out, but at one point our parents had to give us the freedom to not know what the hell's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, funny you should say that. We were at the Great Wolf Lodge here 2 days ago, and we're sitting there walking around, and they've got these wand things with the book that you point into stuff.
You're gonna solve the mystery of the Great Wolf Lodge.
Right. Yeah. And they wanted $100 for like a wand that they spent $2 on, and a little paper map. And my daughters, we want to do that. We want to do that. I'm like, nope, we're not going to do it.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Why can't we do that, Dad? Well, we're too poor, so we're not going to do it. And I think not giving in to them at every time when they ask for something speaks volumes too.
Yeah.
And they say, well, why can't we do it? Well, because I said so. Now we're going to move on. I mean, you have those experiences, but you still find situations where you're like, no, we're not going to do that. Because you're holding something back. I think that 45-year-old shithead, I mean, it's because my dad and mom gave him everything he ever asked for. and there's some value in just holding back on certain things too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The biggest travesty in life is the guy who got everything he ever wanted. I mean, if you don't have
Right.
something to strive for,
Right.
what's your existence? I mean, and that can be,
Yes.
what you're striving for could be anything.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing it in the dairy industry right now too. I mean, for the most part, we're getting the crap kicked out of us. But you learn to love the fight, and you have to love the fight. Otherwise, you're not going to be around. And it's trying to find a better mousetrap. It's trying to find a way to become more efficient. And that kind of a mentality and that kind of a mindset only comes from struggling and going through hard times. You can't read it in a book. You can't learn it in college. That's something that you just have to experience.
Yeah. One of my, when I first came back and started farming, I think I was 4 or 5 years into it, and a tornado came through and wiped out all my sprinklers. And it was kind of that moment that it was like, and the corn was about 2 inches tall. It was kind of oh shit, the worst thing that could possibly happen just did. And you look around and you think, well, now we've got to go get more sprinklers. I mean, there's a process to like having your world collapse. And I mean, this is and I don't wish this on anybody, but I've been through it once, is, if you go through a divorce, it changes you as a person, and it makes you better because you realize what didn't work the first go around. And you think, I need to be a better person as a human, just, I mean, hell, in life in general. And those things that you think are going to kill you or wreck you probably are some of the best things that ever happened to you in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a saying too, and there's a lot of truth in it. I mean, the first generation, they roll up their shirt sleeves, meaning they work their butt off. They know what it takes to get something done.
Yeah.
The second generation rolls down their shirt sleeves, meaning they become more corporate, and they find a way to grow the business and expand. And then the third generation loses their shirt sleeves. And there's something, the further you get away from that period of struggle, I think the more disservice you do to somebody. And the trick, whether it's raising kids or it's business, finding a way to, one, my dad did it too. He let me fall. He let me stumble. He'd say, go, you're in charge of this now, take care of this. And I could screw it up, and in certain situations I did screw it up, and I wanted to expand and grow. And your dad said, okay, we'll help you and this is what we'll do. But we see it all the time where there's 70, 80-year-old farmers that didn't let their kid make a decision their entire life.
Yep.
And then they pass away. And you got a 50-year-old that's never made a decision, and they struggle. I mean, they go out and do stupid stuff because now the fall is a lot greater than it would have been at 23 in kind of a controlled environment.
Yeah. It's like they turned them loose without training wheels. In essence, that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I went through something very similar in that I was allowed, by virtue of the fact that I didn't have a dad that came back and farmed, I took over from my grandfather, and then he shortly had a stroke and passed away. And so I was kind of like, here you go wreck this car.
Yeah.
and I,
right.
And I did. I religiously tore some stuff up now. But having that in my back pocket gives me way more insight as a 40-year-old than it would have if I'd have taken over at 40. I mean, if I take over at 40, it's like, wow, hey, all I know is somebody writes me a check, it works, and I just have to go through the motion. Yeah. And I think that something that you brought up, you said that the third generation loses their sleeves. So I look at this. It's really no fault of the guy who's the third generation. He or she, because I'm not sexist and we're not going to act like we are. But he or she basically won the ovarian lottery, and they got it born into a situation where they had an advantage. So,
right.
It simply is a matter of personality. They would have to somehow choose to make their life more difficult to garner that experience, maybe. But I mean, what about that person who's simply born into this situation that, I mean, they essentially follow the track to where it leads them, and then they end up as a 50-year-old and with now the management's thrust upon them. I mean, that guy's just as human as you or I. They didn't do anything wrong. They just were born in the situation they were. So, it's hard to fault those people. The outcome that they get is negative sometimes, but if they would have been born as the first generation, who knows that they wouldn't have, went out and went prospect and found their own gold claim in their own life.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and in some respects, I had that too. I mean, I was working with my dad, and he had a farm, but it wasn't large, and I said I'd rather go out on my own and grow and expand, and in some respects, left the comfort of what could have been, and so to say that third generation, it's never going to happen. I'm sure there's situations where it works out well, and they do well and they thrive in that environment. It'd be interesting to see the numbers on it. I mean, like generational businesses, what percent, do thrive and do grow. And, but you're dealing with a whole different thing. It's a whole different environment too. I mean, that third generation, a lot of times you're dealing with a massive corporation and so you're not cut out for it. I mean, it's like, if you enjoy, I don't know, do you drilling beans and planting corn? And third generation now, you're sitting there worried about futures prices and locking up the next, quarter section of land. It's a whole different job than doing what you love. I mean, maybe you love just riding the tractor, planting beans and corn. No,
I think that as much as anything, the first, second, and third generations, we can all agree that the fourth generation is the one that's going to really screw it up. I mean, they're the ones. I mean, I say that jokingly, but I also kind of look at that. There is a certain amount of, in the history of ag, it's like, I've got to get it. And we talked about this earlier. It's always hand it down, hand it down, hand it down. And then it's like hot potato. Hey, I survived my life. Yeah. I got done. I didn't screw the pooch with this. Somebody else's. I mean, eventually everybody, there's always going to be a fumble on fourth down, on fourth. Down, it's going to happen. And that doesn't, that's the part I struggle with, watching guys that, that they've been handed this deal and through no fault of their own, they just couldn't make it work. And it's like that weight of the world coming down on them. And to what you said earlier, it's emotion, it should be business, but man, somebody loves that fence post that their great granddad put in 100 years ago because they were told it's like the watch scene out of Pulp Fiction. I mean, that watch has a lot of meaning to whoever carried it around. I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't know what you do with that kind of weight that's put on people, especially young people that maybe are coming back to do it.
Right. Because I mean, that job, by the time you get to the third and fourth generation, that's a corporate job in a lot of instances. If you have a business that's lasted that long, and to say, hey, you now are CEO material. Well, what if they're not? There's very few people that are CEO material.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I think Paris Hilton did it. I mean, they just go and let everybody else run it and they hold shares in the company. Right. And then you can't screw it up and you watch somebody else that's more, more equipped to run it. And then you go and you do what you love, driving tractor or pounding fence posts or whatever it is.
Yeah. You hand over the business so that you've got the freedom to go just hang out and have fun in it. That'd be kind of cool though. I mean, if you imagine if your dairy was so successful that you could just kind of just job jump, be like, I'm going to go milk today.
Right.
You know what? Or I'm going to go clean pins because the consequences are irrelevant. It's going to be successful because I've got people in place and it's like you get to have your own dirty jobs experience on your own place. That would be kind of fun.
Right. It would be. Well, and you're starting to see that more and more. I mean, in the Midwest, there's large conglomerations of, 50, 60,000 cow dairies where, people have joined forces and now you're shareholders in the company and you own your little sliver of some massive corporation. And then either you be employed by the company or you don't, I think that's where this thing's going to go.
Yeah.
Is just continue to get bigger and bigger.
But somebody has to be, and this is where I think maybe it really starts to Hunger Games, the agriculture industry is like, you have a whole bunch of people that enter the arena and only one of them is gonna emerge. and that's going to replicate itself
Yeah.
over and over and over till, I mean, I've made this comment before, but I think a lot of people that are in agriculture right now, we're the all-stars. I mean, we're the only ones that are
Yeah.
kind of left. So, I mean, when you start having all these people pitted against each other, I mean, you're talking about some elite managers that are going to emerge to manage these mega farms or mega dairies or
Yeah.
mega agriculture entities.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's constantly getting better and it's constantly improving. And what's to say that eventually it doesn't all go corporate? I mean, is that the future? I don't know. And maybe corporations look at commodities and they say, well, we're not happy with a 6% margin. I mean, we'll let the schlubs do it, and we'll keep selling them fertilizer and go from there.
I think what we really need is just a good old fashioned like famine, and then we ride in on a white horse with like leading a herd of Jersey cows. Like, we shall feed and clothe the masses, and then everybody will hold us up on their shoulders and be like, "Look at what the farmer did for us," and then everything is
right
again. And I mean,
right.
Yes, a few million people will starve in the meantime, and that's going to be tragic and it's going to be horrible. But as a means to an end, if we had a famine, it might work out good for those of us in the food world.
You might be able to tap into some liberal ideology with that. I mean, they're hoping for that anyway. We're overpopulating the earth, and then we could make that our global warming. Where send us your billions of dollars, and we'll solve your problem for you. So.
How ironic would that be? Pay us to stop farming, and like you join forces, like some evil Voltron movie where the farmers and the liberals align to eradicate the population.
Right. Well, and it's I mean, you go and you follow some of these ideologies, right? I mean, a historically liberal ideology. I mean, you're in favor of abortion. You're in favor of the death penalty. You're opposed to GMOs.
A lot
to me,
of
GMOs.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I agree. And this GMO thing too. I mean, it in Brad Pitt going out and saying, "Oh, hey, we need chickens to have 12 square feet," and forcing all these mega corporations to do that. It doesn't impact Brad Pitt. It impacts the mom that's trying to feed her 3 kids as a single mother. This GMO thing, and it's the people at the bottom that are going to suffer. And yet, we convert everything to organic, and also now we're in a food shortage. So maybe that's the solution. Everybody goes organic.
Hey,
and
yes.
then we reduce feed by 40%.
I went down that rabbit hole a couple years ago when it finally dawned on me. Just what you said is, hey, I encourage everybody to go organic. Like, the more the merrier, because eventually this thing is going to run its course. And by the way, we just fucked up a whole bunch of farmland that now we can't raise on. And it maybe it's just a self-limiting program that's ingrained in the humans. Is when it gets too good, things will emerge like organic or anti-GMO stuff. Like, maybe that is like hardwired into our DNA. Like, these poor soft people have it so good that we need to create these. We're going to artificially create a famine to thin the herd.
Right. Yeah. Well, and when you're worried about where your next meal comes from, you don't care how big the cage was that the rabbit was in it. I mean,
yeah, no, I agree. And this is what I mean. Have you done much traveling to the more dire straits part of the world, where you go to places that maybe aren't as fortunate as America?
Yeah, I went to Nicaragua.
Yeah. So when you see these people and what they go through, that brings a sad face of reality to those are like you said, those are the people that when you talk about free range chickens, well, if we're going to short someone an egg carton, it's not going to be the suburban mom. I mean, she's still going to get her eggs, even though they may cost 3 pennies more. It's going to be, we don't have extra eggs that are going to end up on a boat going somewhere to feed the impoverished people of the world. And I mean, and so then the argument is, should we be, are we beholden to feed everybody, or should we only feed the people that can afford it? I mean, that's a big old rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, I'm in the same boat with you with the organic thing. I mean, if somebody can find a way to increase their margins, go for it. I mean, I don't care. I mean, You go and tap into a niche market. That's fine. As long as you don't go out and sit there and bash me and the way I do it. And yet at the same time, that's kind of the result of going out and pushing some of these other products too. I mean, we see it in the dairy thing too. We have Organic Valley, having cows in jails, in their commercials, when for 9 months out of the year, their cows are in the same type barns that ours are, and not only that, I mean, a lot of these animals, they get, you get a cow that gets pneumonia or sick. I mean, instead of giving them the medicine that they need, antibiotics they need, I mean, they're shoving garlic cloves up their butt and rubbing sunflower oil on their back. And, I mean.
Wait. Does that really happen? Because
you should try it.
This is what I imagine in my mind. There's like this organic dairy, and there's just people like organic, or there's essential oil misters scattered about the building.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
No, exactly. Wait, put her into the lavender pen. That's what she needs. She needs some lavender oil.
Exactly right. No, I mean, to me, it's an animal welfare issue. I mean, you've put so much money into raising this animal organically that also now she gets sick. You don't want to give her what she needs to get better, so you keep trying these alternative medicine crap. And I don't know. It's frustrating.
There's a whole industry of cow chiropractors, and I even cracked a joke about this once about just being a smart ass, because that's what you do, like you said, for likes and attention. I made the comment that people take their pets to chiropractors. Like, that was the joke. That was it.
Yeah.
And
right.
I was amazed at the number of people who were like, well, yes, that's what you do. Don't you understand that it helps them? And I was kind of baffled, because I'm like, in my mind, it was very humorous, because it's like, you dumb bastard, to taking your dog to a chiropractor. And that was
right.
Humor in it for me. And then to get back, like, people that I know and respect are like, yeah, I do this to my horse. I do it to my thing. And I'm like, I got nowhere. I got nothing left in the tank. I don't know where to go with this, because you win. I mean, when somebody's reality matches my sarcasm, I'm at a loss for words. It's like, I didn't think anybody would actually do this, but they do.
Right. And I mean, the world we live in, I mean, it's completely upside down. And some of that is, I mean, because we live in the lap of luxury. And so we find these odd things to spend our time and money on.
Yeah. Like Twitter.
Crazy. Like Twitter. Exactly. Hey, it's a news source. Yeah.
No, honestly, honey, I need to look at my phone just to check and make sure that no one wants to get back with me on this article that I posted. Yeah. Well, man, this has been a blast. It has been awesome, and I think people are going to really appreciate to get to see this side of you. Yeah, you're a funny guy every day, but behind it all, you're just like the rest of us, and you go through every day with the same struggles. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your time. I mean, man, I hate to take away people's time to do this, but I know from a fact that people really appreciate to hear guys like you and your perspective. And thank you for them for coming on and talking with us today.
Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure. And no, I really enjoy meeting everybody. And no, this was fun. I enjoyed it. So
that's awesome. I really hope that there's some group that you pissed off. And if I get anything out of this next week, if somebody is like livid pissed, and then Faber becomes, instead of the glory boy who's funny, he becomes like, you become the Saddam Hussein of Ag Twitter, and everybody like, can you believe he said that? That would make me so happy. I'd be like, oh yeah, he said, can you believe that shit? And I'd join in. I'd be like, right with them.
One big setup.
Yeah. No, it's fun, man. Thanks for coming on and doing this. And I'm going to wrap it up right quick, and hold on. We're going to talk about songs and all this other fun stuff whenever we hang up. But thanks for coming on, and thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Jared. Appreciate it.